good day. My name is Nikki, and today MRDC's founder Phil Hearn, who just recently produced a software evaluation guide that will help research agency choose the right software. So in today's podcast, I'm going to challenge some of the views he put into that guide. So they are not necessarily my views, but doubts that you might recently have or might want to challenge. So I'm going to put those doubts to Phil today. Phil?
Hi Nikki, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. All right. So regarding to the functionality, I'm going to start with software functionality. So presumably the first criterion for choosing a software product is its functionality, right? So does the software do what you want? So you have gone on record telling people to ignore product checklists that you find on websites. So you also think that trials are often misused. So what do you think is the best way to evaluate the functionality of a software product?
Yes, yeah, thanks Nikki. I think I'd start by saying that a lot of people, I think, start with functionality being the sort of most important thing. And don't get me wrong, it is important. And I don't like websites where they give you a checklist because that's almost the software company sort of giving their agenda of what they want you to see and think. And one thing I always encourage people who are buying from us or buying any software, and I do myself if I'm buying software, is to have your own checklist, because then you get the answers to your questions. If you see a checklist that a software provider's given you, they're going to tell you the things, that the good bits. They're not going to have tick boxes saying it doesn't do something that you want. So I think it's important to have your own checklist. And also, I think trials are often wasted or perhaps not used as perhaps as well as they might be. And I think it's worth having your pre-trial target. So before you do your trial, what do you expect to come out of it? Do you expect a perfect solution? Do you want to be confident it can do most of what you do? What is your targets? Is it got to do it at a price? Think about the things that are your real targets. Is it going to be too difficult for the staff that you anticipate using it? Is it too simple and doesn't do enough? Just have some targets of what you want to achieve from a trial, because then I think you get more out of it. Otherwise, if you go into a trial without thinking that, you can just pick up problems or things that perhaps don't look as easy as you'd imagine, and perhaps they're not very important, or perhaps they are very important. So I think trialing is a really important area. I think when you're going to do a trial, assuming the software provider will let you do a trial with their software that's of a decent length of time, like a month, make sure you've got time for that trial, first of all. I have seen people who want a trial and don't look at it until the last 2 days of their trial. But pick something that's not the simplest thing you ever do, but certainly not the most complex thing you do, because then you're going to be struggling to find where all these things are within the software, and you're bound to have a bad experience. So it's not going to be a fair trial. So pick something, if you like, that's average, or what you consider most typical of what you do, perhaps a bit more difficult than that. But yeah, make sure it's a reasonable trial without just sort of picking the most horrible project you've ever had to run online or to analyze, or whatever it might be that you're evaluating. And one of the things I think, going back to checklists, is I think it's very easy to make those checklists yes/no questions, because that's what checklists are, tick lists if it's true. And I give an example of that, I've had people say, well, can your software handle tracking studies? And most providers of software will say, yes, it can. That's not really the question, because when it comes to things like tracking studies, I've seen software that can do it very, very easily, handle tracking studies where questions change, filters change, codes change, and so on, through to ones that can do it, but it's a lot of work to do it. Like, they might have to spend a day to recode data to match wave 1 data with wave 2 data. So the question is, can your software handle tracking studies? And someone says yes is an honest answer, but doesn't really get into the depth of how easy or difficult that is. So avoid too many yes/no questions in your checklist, but also set targets and make your trial something that really shows you what you want to see.
Okay, makes sense. Anyway, regarding the price, Phil, the second thing will be the price. So you challenge the fact that the price tag for research software is a prime consideration for buyers, right? So that's surely if a product is, let's say, $3,000 for more expensive than another product, this can't be ignored. What's
Yes,
your thinking about this?
yeah. I mean, I'm in danger here because I'm a software supplier of saying, "Oh, just spend another three," or being treated as though I'm saying, just spend another $3,000 with us. It doesn't matter, and I think nothing's further from the truth, actually. Yes, $3,000 is important. So if one product is $3,000 more expensive than another, yes, you have to take that into consideration, just like any
Mhm.
other business decision that you make. But I would look at it a little bit more in depth than that. Does that $3,000, for example, bring in $30,000 more business? Because if it does, that $3,000 is a fairly negligible amount. It even might mean that $3,000 keeps some business that you're in danger of losing because someone else can do it better with another piece of software. So, $3,000 has to be looked at in a business context, and that $3,000 might mean you need one less member of staff, which will save you that $3,000. It might mean you can deliver quicker. It might mean you can have less skilled staff doing the work. All sorts of things might be possible by spending that 3,000. So I have known people not to buy our software, and there've been painful moments when I know they bought something else um, that's cheaper, and they bought it to save $1,000. Actually, it's going to cost them far more than $1,000 in increased staff time or whatever else it might be, or lost projects. So I think buying software should be a business decision, and I think um, rather than just looking at the price tag, look at what benefit it has to you. We do that in our personal lives. We look at, when we buy things, what benefit something gives us back. And I think this all ties in with the fact that I think that research is increasingly being won on speed, the deliverables, and the price you can do it at. And if you buy some software that means you can deliver faster, deliver something better, like an online dashboard, for example, um, or you can do it more cheaply, you're going to win more business. So, we like to believe that in market research that it's all about the quality, but actually, when it comes to buying research, I think more companies fail in market research because they're slow or have poor deliverables or are just too expensive, rather than poor quality. The quality of market research is already there. So actually, I think the differentiators between different research companies often is about their speed, what they can deliver and how well they can deliver it, and the price they can do it at. So look at software purchases just like another business decision, rather than saying we're going to spend this and then look what looks best for that particular price, because there can be a lot more to it than that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Anyway, with regards to the look and feel, without a doubt, some products look more welcoming than others, so they look easier to use. Yet you challenge the fact that look and feel is not important. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I don't totally challenge the look and feel is not important. What I would say is that appearance is not important. I mean, I see software as tools to do a job well, and so ease of use is much more important than appearance. I've seen some nice looking software, and it is nice. It is aesthetically pleasing and so on, but don't get confused with ease of use. And one of the things I encourage people to do, because often when people trial and test software, they sort of try out all sorts of obscure things they're not really going to use very much. So focus on the things you're going to do a lot of and see how easy it feels to you. So as an example there, let's say when you're buying a product that does online surveys, for example, and a lot of your questionnaires are rating scales, for example. So that's your business. You do surveys with a lot of rating scales. Well, let's do that 10 times. How easy does that feel? Does it feel after you've done it about the third or fourth time that it's actually something you can do really quickly because you know where everything is? The buttons you have to press are all in convenient places. You can paste in perhaps your text from Word, Excel, whatever it might be. Those sorts of things really increase productivity. And if for one of those rating scales you want one obscure option that perhaps, I don't know, reverses the grid or something like that, yes, it's important that that's there and easy to find. But if you're only doing that once in 10 rating grids, maybe that doesn't matter very much. It's what the day-to-day work, how easy is it to do the day-to-day things that you want to do. And I think in trialing, again, people can easily get sort of looking at features they're hardly going to use, whereas they should be focusing on what people are doing day to day with the product. So, imagine yourself doing the different types of work you want to do, and sort of imagine doing that. Think it through. Imagine, get your staff who perhaps are going to use it to trial that and look at that and see how easy they think it's going to be. So appearance and look and feel, yes, everything's got to be convenient to access within the software you're using, but some nice layouts and colors don't necessarily help very much. It's really how easy it is to do what you want to do with it, and does it seem intuitive to go through the steps that you need to achieve the purpose of why you're using that software. If not, it may be that you're using the wrong software or looking at the wrong software, however pleasing it might be to look at. So that was really my point, I think, with look and feel there.
All right. So regarding the data compatibility, in your guide, Phil, you say that the data compatibility is often given too little consideration. So that surely if you can do everything you need to within a software package, it doesn't matter too much. So why do you stress the importance of data compatibility?
I think that there's just a strong belief I have that data's got to become more and more mobile these days. That it's fine saying the software does everything I want with that data, but you need to be more and more prepared to be able to move that data to wherever your client wants it, whether that be a CRM database, whether that be some data visualization tool, maybe some internal software that a company has. Research data becomes more valuable the more mobile it is, and research is a bit of a specialist business in terms of data and software. Data in research is different from a lot of other commercial data, but it's important that that data is mobile and can be transferred to where it needs. Otherwise, you won't meet your client's expectations. So I do think being able to get data out into other databases, into spreadsheets, use other APIs and so on is really quite important and increasingly important. It's not something that's become less important, it's become more important. So when evaluating software, if it just does the job now, that might be fine, but we've also got to look at whether that data can be delivered in the right way. And there's a new initiative I learned of only just a week ago, actually, that I've always been a greatly supported Triple S, which is a tool for moving data around between different market research software packages. And it's just been announced there's going to be a TS API, which is a Triple S API, so that data can be easily transferred to any business data platform that has an API, which I think is a real bit of progress. Now that's in its very embryonic stages, but I think really opens up research to be able to move data into other business data with other business data, so that it has much more power and much more value. I really hope that initiative takes off. So data's got to be more mobile these days, and I think market researchers and research agencies have given too much thought sometimes to collecting data and analysing data, and forgetting the bit in the middle, which sounds incredibly boring, but I have no better name for it than data management. But I think data management will become king, as it were, in the future. It's one of the reasons for us, or one of the key reasons for us linking our software to the CYS platform, because that platform has really powerful tools in it for pulling together market research data and other business data like sales, KPIs, targets, and so on, so that it can be put into a dashboard for visualization. So data management is something that's sort of not an exciting topic to talk about, but I think is neglected at peril, if you like, or at one's peril, because data management's become more and more important. And I think increasingly companies ought to be thinking about having someone who understands that and who can, make data available to clients and make it easy to transfer data between the different places that it needs to be. So I think data compatibility is really important, and something, it's not necessarily a very interesting topic to talk about if you're doing market research, but it's something that really needs to be focused on, and therefore I think the products that are or handle data well are the products of the future.
Okay. All right. So you talk about thinking whether your software needs or are fixed or uncertain. So surely if a software product handles your most complex project, you don't need to look beyond that, right, Phil?
Well, I think yes. I think I can. It depends what you do, I suppose, is the answer to that. There are companies that just do one type of survey, and as a result of that, they know what their business is, so they don't really need the software to go beyond that. And if the software handles that task efficiently, it's the right software. There's not much more to it than that. But research agencies typically have to take on all types of research and all types of projects, and they do need that bit of flexibility, so that if a project comes along that's slightly different or has slightly more complex demands, they can handle it. Otherwise, they're just not going to be able to bid for that work, or they're going to have to subcontract it. So I do think having software that can do just a little bit more and has some flexibility is important, rather than just doing a task, unless, as I say, your business is doing one particular type of research or one type of deliverable. So you don't want to have software that stops you taking on business, or makes you very uncompetitive, or means you've got to subcontract it. You want some room for growth, because also the people using the software will get better at it and will start to be able to offer your clients more if it's a production tool in some sense. So I think MR agencies need to be flexible. So I'm not suggesting that wild overspending here on a product that might do everything you might ever want to do, because if you get a really huge project, you can always buy another product to deal with that, because there'll be a budget there. But having some flexibility within it, I think, is quite useful and relatively important. Not perhaps top of the list, but quite important.
All right. So MRDC sells both scripting and GUI software. So how important do you consider the decision when buying a software?
Yes, we do sell. We sell software that's scripting, and we sell GUI software, or menu-driven software. Call it what you will. GUI stands for graphical user interface, that for those who are not familiar with that term. But I think it's a crucial decision. Scripting works well when you have a high volume of work with regular users. It works well when you're perhaps doing a particular type of work and you need scripting for it because of the complexity. But scripting isn't necessarily the right thing for everybody and for every company and for every team. To illustrate that, for example, our MRDCL tabulation software is scripting software, and that's very much aimed at either teams that are doing a high volume of work, where the people in those teams are spending 80% maybe of their time or certainly more than 50% of their time using that piece of software. So they get very good at it, very productive, find all sorts of shortcuts that save hours of time, which are usually not possible in GUI software. But we, on the other hand, we sell Snap, where there's no scripting. There's one or two shortcuts you can type in, like filters you can type in as an expressions, but generally it's what you call a classic GUI interface. And I think that works really well for people setting up online questionnaires, for example, where you want probably a wide range of different people to set up their own questionnaires, not have to learn complex scripting language or getting errors that they don't understand. So I think there, for online surveys, usually for most teams, GUI is the better thing. I know there are tools like Confirm It out there that use scripting, and they might be, again, appropriate for big teams that are doing high volumes, perhaps as an agency of online surveys. But generally, I think GUI is better for scripting, or sorry, specifying online surveys. And that's because scripting's more prone to error, needs more expensive staff. It's slow for irregular users. But of course, scripters get shortcuts and higher productivity if they use it for most of their time and they have the right volume of work. I mean, one of the things that I always make people wary of, there are some products out there that are sold as easy to use and do have some graphical user interface, but actually when it comes to it are really scripting languages. And I've known people buy one or two products where they buy it and they realize very quickly they actually got to learn a scripting language, having sort of seen a demonstration of the basics. They've got to actually learn a scripting language, they've got training costs, and they need specialist staff who spend most of their time doing it. Otherwise, they're not going to be very productive doing it. And there's a long time to get fully productive. So scripting language is right, I think, in the right places. GUI is right in probably more cases. For our tabulation software, we have QPSMR and MRDCL, which actually is a nice fit together because they use the same engine, they connect with each other. One uses graphical user interface and one uses scripting. So there is an upgrade path there, so that you might start by doing projects through a graphical user interface, but if you find there's some projects where you get benefits, or with experience you can do better using a scripting language, you can just add that extra module, and you can do it through scripting and get the benefits of using scripting if that's appropriate. But I think I think the decision is critical, and deciding what suits you as a company and your team is really important, and getting that wrong can be an expensive mistake.
All right. So we talked earlier about fixed or uncertain needs. So again, I would question whether an upgrade path is important if the software meets all your needs. So why is an upgrade up path important?
I think one of the reasons is that change can be expensive. It's not saying you shouldn't change software if it's going to benefit your business. It's very easy not to change because there are always arguments against changing, like it means retraining staff, it means converting projects possibly that have been a tracking study, for example, been running in another piece of software. But change does cost. You can't hide from that fact. So you don't want to have something that just meets your needs now. You do want to be able to upgrade. Some suppliers do that. Certainly some of the more low-cost products for online do that by giving you extra features as you go to the next package. So you might start on a package that's, I don't know, $30 a month or something, but then as you want more features, it goes up to $90 a month, and then for all the features, it goes up to $200 a month. And you have to be quite careful with those because, of course, they're hoping that that's what you do. You start at $30 a month, and before you know it, you're spending $200 a month. So there is an upgrade path, but it can be quite an expensive upgrade path when it's priced like that. But thinking ahead to what might be important in the future, I know that's difficult, but I think sometimes decisions about what software is used is not a shared decision. I think it's important that the users have a voice. the boss obviously has a voice because he's probably signing the check. People in production should have a choice, and definitely client-facing staff should have input as well, because they're the ones who know what their clients want now and should be in a position to know what their clients are going to want in the future. So, I think software decisions ought to be a team effort, and I think it should be a mixture of the users and whoever's managing production and people actually who are client facing. So, I'd add to this as well, things like understanding where the software supplier plans to go in the future is quite important. MRDC, if you like, as if I talk up to about 2 or 3 years ago, we spent a lot of effort and development making our software more productive. That was our focus, if you like. If I had to name one thing about our software up to 2 years ago, it was productivity, and I think we've achieved that. I know there's always room for improvement, so I'm not complacent about that, but that was probably the focus of MRDC up to 2 years ago for the previous 5 years. I think now our focus is, if you like, another flavor of productivity, but it's more data focused and being able to move data where you want it so that you can report data how you want it. And consequently, we are very much moving into data reporting and data visualization as being a focus, because I think that's something that market research has lagged behind in a little bit and is starting to catch up, but has got a long way to go still. And I think that's something that we need to be at the forefront of, and that's why, if you like, our focus now is on making deliverables better, which you could say is another form of productivity, but I'd actually say that I think improving the deliverables is what we're about at the moment. We're in the middle of that 5 years at the moment, and perhaps in 3 years' time I'll be saying that's where we've been doing the last 5 years. So, that I think having an upgrade path is important, and understanding where your software suppliers are going is important, because market research doesn't stand still, business doesn't stand still. There's always new things coming, and it's important perhaps not to be at the front of that, but be very close behind that initial wave of change. And I think changes are afoot in market research right now.
Mm-hmm. So it's easy to see that support is important for complex, high-end products, but it does matter so much for easier products.
Yeah, support's an interesting one. I think I think you have to meet expectations now. I know when I buy software, I buy a lot of software and I use a lot of online tools for different things. I expect to be able to find out answers easily and online now. So I think, software suppliers ought to be geared up to that now. So they should have the videos online. They should have the tutorials. It may be downloadable documents if that's an easier way of communicating how to get the best out of software. But answers should be available now, through videos, documents, and training programs, whatever it might be, because users want to know the tricks, because there's always tricks in software that make things easier or better to do. And market research is probably too small a business to have software suppliers to run big forums where questions are answered. So there's if you use something like Salesforce, for example, which is used around the world and has thousands of users, it's got a forum so that you can ask questions and other users can answer questions for you, and you can find most of the answers there, although sometimes you get conflicting answers from forums. Market research software suppliers tend not to be big enough to be able to do that, so they need to supply good online materials in the form of tutorials, videos, and other documentation that makes life easy. And of course, that's not forgetting the humans as well. You do need human support, because there'll always be a day when you can't work something out. I know with clients using MRDCL, for example, our scripting language for tabulations, that they've used it for perhaps 15, 20 years, and there's something they just can't work out how to do. It doesn't mean that they can't use the product very competently, but they just perhaps can't remember how to do something that they did last 5 years ago, and they want some help. So having a human that they can speak to or exchange emails with is really important as well. And so, I'm not suggesting that the human touch is not important anymore, but it adds to all these other things and resources that should be there, I think. And indeed, that's something that we've grown extensively over the last 3 or 4 years, our resources.
All right. So one of the things in your guide talks about whether you're a typical customer. Surely, if the software does what you want, it doesn't matter if you are a typical customer.
Yes, my point here, I suppose, and maybe again, it's not top of the list in terms of priorities, but I think every company, whether you're a market research agency, whether you sell fast food, whatever it might be, has the customers or types of customers that it fits best, that's an ideal fit for their business. And of course, we all take on customers who aren't an ideal fit. But the closer they are to an ideal fit, the more likely you're going to have a happy customer supplier relationship. And so I think looking at what's a typical customer for any software supplier that you might go to is really important. And I'd be the first to admit that I don't think MRDC is the perfect supplier for every market research agency out there. I think it's a really good supplier for many, many market research agencies out there, but it might not be the perfect supplier for everyone. But then I don't think any software company is a perfect supplier to every company in market research, even though some companies try to portray themselves as that. So I think, it's important to perhaps understand a company's ethos, reading what it says on its website, looking at the direction the company's going to see how you fit in as a customer. So I think being a good fit is actually quite important, and being a typical customer, or being the type of customer that supplier serves well, it is a sort of slightly qualitative thing that's hard to put into to put into words. But I think the more you feel that you're a good fit, I think is a good thing, because if you get a good fit, that should mean that's bigger profits for both parties. That the company using that software should make more profits, and indeed the company who supply the software should make bigger profits as well. So there's a greater satisfaction that's sort of two-way. So that sounds a bit idealistic, I know, but I think getting good fits is really important in business. And I think that's something that perhaps I've learned in years. I think there was a time when I first set up in business many years ago, like 30 years ago or more, that I would chase any piece of business I could. And I think more and more I've learned that getting good fits works for us, and works also, of course, for the people buying from us. So yeah, looking at being a typical customer, or the right type of customer, perhaps not typical, but a good fit, I think really is important.
Mm-hmm. You have said in the past that too many software purchases are based on today's needs, so it's always hard to see into the future. So particularly in fast-moving modern times right now, surely looking longer term is such a waste time.
Yes, I like that question. No, I think yes, when you're looking to the future, you are guessing what might happen. You can't predict everything that's going to happen, but you want to be working with suppliers who you think are pulling in the same direction as you are, and understand your needs, and can make you think about other things. I mean, one of the things that we like to do as a company is not just to sell the software, but to talk about where we're going, what we think can benefit people. And you might not 100% agree with what we're saying. I don't expect that necessarily, but you can see from that where we're going, and we can give you ideas how to improve your business as well. So I think, yes, long term is always a guessing game, but we can see signals. I mean, the signal that's loud and clear to me at the moment is that data from market research is often poorly presented in PowerPoint presentations, or I might say poorly presented. The quality of the PowerPoint is fine, but it's not the most convenient deliverable. And it really is time market research could deliver every project in a dashboard, because that's a much easier thing for people to pick up and use and get more from their data anytime they want to. And one of my crusades, if that's the right word, is to get every project delivered in an online dashboard. Now, I know that's idealistic, and I know it never be 100%. I know it's not what wanted really, but if we can move towards that target, I think it'd be a good thing. At the moment, online dashboards, which I think is the direction that deliverables are moving, online dashboards are still overpriced in most products. I know of one of the companies that have got quite a good piece of software, but they're charging, I think, something like $4,000, $5,000 per project to make it available in a dashboard. Now, that's just a budget that's not available on most small medium market research projects that are ad hoc surveys. It might be okay on a big tracker. In fact, it'd be no problem at all, that budget. But I really strongly believe, and that's again a reason that we've gone with the CYS platform, is that becomes affordable, that you can afford to deliver every project in an online dashboard and have the quality that you need. So, I think, yes, long term is important. You should be trying to get more productivity, being able to do things faster, more cheaply, and make use of that. And staff will get better at using the software as well, but they should be moving in the direction where that helps you to make a bigger profit. And I think choosing the right software can achieve that. So if you don't think you're getting the best out of your software, it is a time to question the software you use. And changing software has its pains, but often they're not as bad as people think. It does cost, but put it in a spreadsheet, do the cost of changing, look at how much you might make in the future by making that change. So maybe it costs you X dollars this year, but next year you might make $2X in profit more. So I think sometimes people put off these decisions because it means disruption to their daily lives, or having projects to handle become a bit more difficult for 6 months. But if that means you get a payback within a year or 2 years, there really is no excuse not to take on that challenge and change the software you're using for something that can deliver something that's better and hopefully bring you more business, because it should do.
Okay. So finally, you say, does it feel right when buying software from a supplier? And again, if the software does what you need, does emotion come into it?
Yeah, I like making this point. I like to sort of soften business. I'm very business minded, and yes, you've got to think about things in terms of how many dollars something makes, and how many dollars it might cost you by not doing something, and what the cost of the software is. But I think there is an emotional side to it as well, and that really shouldn't be forgotten. Think about your best customers if you're thinking of buying software. Who are the ones that you get the best business from, you probably make the most profit from as well? They're the ones where it's a good partnership. You feel right with that customer. They trust you, you trust them, and that has a value. And I think the same's true about software, that it's tempting to buy software just as or imagine it as a box. I know we download it these days, but imagine it coming in a box like Windows used to and Office used to 15 years ago, whatever it was. But that people imagine themselves buying a box and installing that on their computer or getting their login, whatever it might be. And I think, there is an emotional side to it. Do you feel comfortable working with this company? And if you don't, you shouldn't be working with them, even if they perhaps have the best product or the right. It's important to work with people who you trust and think they've got the right ideas in terms of what they supply as a service and as a product. So software is no different from anything else. Partnerships are really important, and I do think research agencies ought to look more at forming partnerships with software companies. I know there's a lot of choice in software companies out there. Arguably, there's too many, you might say. But I think research agencies have often been reluctant to partner with software companies because they feel as though they're locked in then. But in a sense, when you buy a product, you're locking yourself in to some extent. So going a bit further and actually feeding back to that research agency and making some commitment to them and asking them to do some things, you're going to get more out of it in the end. So, find a company you trust and work with them. And I think that leads to a much more fruitful relationship in the longer term.
All right. So thank you, Phil, for sharing those information to us. I hope that all our businesses will be successful in such guidelines.
Well, I hope so too. And yeah, it's been good. I'm glad you played the role there, Nikki, of questioning me. I know some of the things you put to me weren't necessarily your views either. You were playing what's called devil's advocate and trying to question all the things that came in my product evaluation guide that I recently wrote. But yeah, I enjoyed talking to you anyway.
All right. Thank you so much, Phil, for your time, and have a good day.
Yeah, you too, Nikki. Goodbye.